Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. And welcome to Friday's edition of the DCEU Daily. The Snyder Cut is more than a film. It's a wrong being righted. They wouldn't allow Zack's movie to be released as the theatrical cut. Instead, they brought in Joss Whedon to put together the load of rubbish he put together. But why? Why are we here? Why are we fighting for the Snyder Cut? We're fighting for the Snyder Cut because it's a superior movie. It's an awesome movie. It's within the tone of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman. It completes his trilogy. But in truth, that his Justice League movie wasn't the end. There was another 2 movies to go in this kind of franchise. There was a 5-story arc, as we already know from so many people within the inside. That's no secret anymore. So they took this masterpiece that Zack was going to give us and take it away. Why? Because they wanted to please the bloggers and the pundits. They thought they could take them to MCU world. You see, Warner Brothers started to believe at that time having a few actors smiling and cracking a few jokes is all that it would take to have a successful IP. But that's not how it works, because the MCU isn't just successful because it cracks a few jokes. It's telling a story. It's work. What works for the MCU works for the MCU. And I think even the president of Warner Brothers has said now what works for them doesn't work for us. But at the time, they thought they could just do what Marvel did. So this is the truth of bringing in Joss Whedon. He worked on Avengers. He had an inside note on how the MCU works. But he was asked to do an impossible task. Come in and turn the DCEU into the MCU in one film. But he couldn't make his own film. He had to take the script and most of what Zack did and kind of mould it into an MCU movie. So this is what he tried to do. But of course there was a big problem because Henry Cavill was already doing Mission Impossible Fallout. He had the goatee. He couldn't get rid of it. It was impossible. No one was going to let him, that was right. Why would any studio let him get rid of that? Because that's the look they wanted him to have. So that was right. So they had to do this CG. It looked terrible. That is one of my main bugbears with the Justice League cut is Henry Cavill's upper lip. I think it's embarrassing. I think it's outrageous to him. It could have been detrimental to his career. So that film should never have been put out, But they didn't want to put Zack's movie out not because they didn't think Zack hadn't made a great movie. They were worried about the bloggers, the pundits, the mainstream audience. They wanted to make loads of money. They wanted to be as popular as the MCU. They just didn't want to put the work in, and there lies the problem. And this is why that's why Justice League failed, is because they tried to be lazy. They wanted a quick fix. They wanted to get to where Kevin Feige got within 6 movies from the moment the audience saw Avengers Assemble. They wanted to get there very quickly too. But Feige put in the work, and the DCEU hadn't. The DCEU made some very good films, some very unique films, like Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman. They were great movies. They were a great beginning. They made the DCEU very unique, and it was great. But because there was so much negativity within the mainstream audience, the mainstream movie pundits, and bloggers. Warner Brothers didn't like that. They didn't feel comfortable about that. So even though they respected what Zack Snyder had achieved thus far, they knew that there was a problem. They knew that Snyder had to be removed. In their eyes, Snyder had to be removed because he wasn't a good fit with the mainstream audience. So Zack Snyder was removed, but he wasn't removed after Batman v Superman, which kicked out a bigger stink than Justice League. There was even pundits and critics saying that Justice League was better than Batman v Superman. I know. What can you say to that? It amazed me. I couldn't even reply to them. I couldn't even comment on their sections because it's so stupid and silly to say Justice League is better than Batman v Superman. That cut of Justice League is nowhere near a quality of any film or the standard of any film. Now, there's moments within that film where they get away with it, and I think, wow, this is awesome. I'm enjoying the music. I'm enjoying the interactions between the characters. But let's get this right. Zack Snyder's cut was a much superior film. Now, let's not mess about. It isn't a different film. They're still fighting Steppenwolf. It's still the story, but there were things like having Darkseid within the movie, very vital things that would have continued into Zack Snyder's 5-movie arc. And that was important. And all that had been destroyed. Justice League 2, no Justice League 2, none of Zack's plans, and Zack's plans were good. But because the mainstream audience weren't happy, and the bloggers and the pundits weren't happy, and everyone in the mainstream kind of group wasn't happy and being negative, and there was this poisonous atmosphere. If you went on YouTube, plenty of videos. If you went on Twitter, people were trolling Zack. It was absolutely terrible because the mainstream audience don't like anything that's different. The problem is the people who didn't like Zack are a lot of the diehard DC comic fans. Obviously, Marvel fans were loving it because MCU fans, should I say, because Marvel comic fans and MCU fans are two very different groups. And I would probably say the DCEU fans and the diehard DC comics are two very different fans as well. So it became really uncomfortable. But what was clear, despite Man of Steel, Batman v Superman being great, unique, indie-type movies, the way they were made, and they were beautiful, too many cooks were spoiling the DCEU broth. So you had Zack, you had Jeff Johns, you had David S. Goyer, you had Chris Terrio, you had so many people, and nobody knew who was in charge because they had brought in Christopher Nolan to be this overseer, this godfather, kind of just overseeing, and this is the problem with people with Chris Nolan and J.J. Abrams. They've got their fingers in so many pies, it becomes problematic when you put them in charge of something. This is why J.J. Abrams doesn't want to take over Lucasfilm, because he knows he can't commit the time that needs to be committed there. And it's the same as Chris. He took on the role. He brought in Zack. He brought in David S. Goyer. And then Warner Brothers appointed Jeff Johns as well. There were so many people there. The left arm didn't know what the right arm was saying. And this was the problem. Now with Walter Hamada there, he's in charge. Everybody knows it. He's brought Peter Safran in. He's brought in a lot of people. But ultimately, he's the boss. And everybody knows that. And kind of all the decisions are being made, the right decisions are being made, and everyone kind of says, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. That's the way it should be. There should always be debate with your leader. I don't know. Maybe we should do this or maybe we should do that. But you should always know who the leader of a group is. So really, when I look back and I think about the Snyder Cut, it does make me angry because that film would have been awesome. It would have been a great chapter of this DCEU, and we never got it. And now us, ordinary people, the fans, have to fight for it. Still, for me, it's common sense. Release it. Just release it on Blu-ray. Send it to my address. I want to see it. That's it. That's the end. I don't care how you explain it. You don't even have to explain it within the DCEU. If you don't want to have it as part of the DCEU, don't. I can live with that. I just want to see it. I want to see Junkie's music. I want to see the actors, the way Zack had got them going. It was a great atmosphere on the Justice League set with Zack Snyder. We all saw that. And, at the end of the day, it would have been a beautiful movie. We need to see that movie. And I'm still fighting. I'm happy with the DCEU. I'm happy with the direction it's going. I'm sad that Zack's no longer involved, but that's life. But I think what they did to him and the way they didn't allow him to complete his vision, I think is wrong. I think it's totally wrong because you're talking about, a couple of movies? So they could have allowed him to have his Justice League 2, let him complete his series. And while he's doing that, Walter Hamada and his team can plot the next chapter, the next move. Because, Zack Snyder's DCEU was still making money because they're so greedy, though. They want to be making top dollar. And I understand that. I just think from a creative perspective, letting Zack finish his vision and then going, well, you've done your 5 arc, right? Your 5 movie arc, right, Zack? Thank you very much. See you later. Have a good time at Netflix. Everyone would have been happy. But to boot the guy out after he'd finished post-production on, finished production and filming on Justice League, say, sorry, mate, we're not actually going to use your cut. We just don't like what you're doing, or we're worried about what the reception to it's going to be. That's not how you treat people. That's not how it works. And this is what happened in the end. It was a disrespect. But I understand Warner Brothers' point of view. I do. They were under immense pressure. They've got DC Comics, whose movies should be making near $1 billion every movie. They should be positivity. But because of the people they brought in, it was always going to go the way it was, because these are, Christopher Nolan is a real artist. Zack Snyder is a real artist. David S. Goyer is a real artist. They're not going to focus on what John Campea thinks or what Grace Randolph thinks. They don't care about that. They care about creating art. And this is the problem. But now, where Disney and Marvel Studios are concerned, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about bang in your buck. Oh yeah, and a little bit of representation and a little bit of politics on the side. Where the guys that Warner Brothers brought in are artists and care about what's on the screen. And that's the difference. And that's not what Hollywood's about anymore. It's not about the art. It's about the box office. It's about what political messages you're pushing. Hollywood has changed. Look at what they've done now with the Oscars, having ad breaks, during the cinematographer awards. What? This is what Hollywood is. Hollywood is a joke. It's not about the art anymore. It's just about money. It was always about money, but at least they cared. At least they let the creatives do their thing so they can make the money. It's not rocket science, is it? But now everything's changed. Hollywood's changed. They literally only put out superhero films. That's all they care about because there's money in it. So Hollywood isn't an all-rounded kind of industry anymore. And Hollywood is dying, to be honest with you. It is dying. And we saw that with what they did to Zack Snyder. Because when you've got a situation when fans like us are fighting for a superior cut to be released, that superior cut doesn't change anything. The fans know you were mistaken, Warner Brothers, to bin Zack Snyder's masterpiece. So you might as well just admit it on the quiet by just releasing the Snyder Cut. If you want to make a big deal out of it and call it the real Justice League and put it in cinemas for a limited time, that's awesome. But you know what? What's more important for me is just seeing it. Just seeing it, putting it in my collection so I don't have to see the Justice League you put out. I can see the real Justice League. The Justice League of Zack Snyder. That's what he deserves. That's what the DCEU fans can deserve. So we can move forward into this exciting universes within universes that Walter Hamada has planned. The future is bright, but we need the Snyder Cut. We need it. We deserve it. You owe it to Zack and Deb. You owe it to everyone to release it. Just make an announcement and release this superior cut of this film. If you release that, you will gain so much respect. Stop it. It's time to come out with your heads held up high and say, yes, we were wrong. We're sorry, Zack. Here's your cut. Finish it off and show the fans what they deserve to see. The real Justice League.